What happens when the calm legacy of wildlife conservation collides with the sharp, unapologetic edge of daytime television? When a young global icon steps onto a set known for opinions that cut deep and moments that explode without warning. The lights are hot, the cameras are rolling, and the audience has no idea they're about to witness a moment that will ripple far beyond the studio walls. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to Prime Talk hit like and drop a comment right now because what you're about to hear is one of those stories people argue about long after the broadcast ends. The studio hums with that familiar pre-show electricity, the kind that settles into your chest before anything even happens. Robert Irwin sits just off-center, hands folded, posture straight but not stiff, the practiced calm of someone who's spent his life in front of cameras without ever chasing the spotlight. He smiles politely as the applause washes over him, a smile that carries echoes of his father's warmth, his sister's poise, and a lifetime of being expected to represent something bigger than himself. He's here to talk about conservation, about wildlife, about carrying a legacy forward in a world that seems louder and more divided every day. Or at least, that's what he thought. Across the table, Joy Behar leans back slightly, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. She's done this 1,000 times. She knows how moments are made, how a casual question can turn into a headline, how tension can bloom in the space between two sentences. The audience senses it too, that subtle shift when conversation stops being polite and starts being interesting. The host introduces Robert with enthusiasm, mentions his famous last name, his recent surge in popularity, his clean-cut image that America seems eager to embrace. Applause again. Robert nods, grateful, steady. The first questions are easy. Childhood at the zoo. Animals that still make his heart race. The responsibility of educating a new generation. Robert answers with sincerity, voice calm, eyes bright. The crowd laughs when he shares a light anecdote, claps when he talks about protecting endangered species. For a moment, it feels safe, predictable, comforting. But Joy's gaze lingers, and when she speaks again, her tone shifts just enough to make the air tighten. So Robert, she says, tilting her head, you've become this symbol of positivity. People see you as wholesome, almost untouchable. But do you ever feel like that image shields you from real criticism? The question lands softly, but its weight is unmistakable. Robert pauses, just a beat too long. He smiles, careful. I think criticism is important, he says. It keeps you honest. Conservation isn't about image, it's about action. Joy nods, but she doesn't let go. Sure, she replies, but action can be political. Wildlife protection, climate change, these aren't neutral topics. Some would say staying nice is a way of avoiding taking a real stand. A murmur ripples through the audience. Robert's fingers tighten together, almost imperceptibly. Inside, he feels it, that familiar tension between staying respectful and speaking his truth. He chooses his words with care. I don't believe kindness means silence, he says. You can stand for something without tearing others down. Joy raises an eyebrow. That sounds good, she says, but it also sounds safe. The word hangs there. Safe. Robert inhales slowly. He thinks of his father, fearless, passionate, unafraid to provoke if it meant protecting animals. He thinks of the millions watching, of young fans who see him as proof that decency still matters. I don't see respect as weakness, he replies, voice firmer now. If anything, it takes strength to keep conversations productive. The audience reacts, some applause, some uneasy shifting. Joy leans forward. But isn't that just another way of saying you don't want to upset anyone? She asks. Because television isn't about comfort. It's about truth. The temperature in the room rises. Robert feels his pulse quicken, but his gaze doesn't waver. Truth doesn't have to be cruel, he says. And conservation suffers when we turn everything into a fight. Joy smiles, but it doesn't reach her eyes. Yet here you are, she says, on a show built on debate. A few gasps. A nervous laugh. Robert's jaw tightens. He senses the moment slipping from friendly discussion into something sharper, something that could define him in 30-second clips across social media. He chooses not to retreat. Debate is healthy, he says. But it works best when we're listening, not just waiting to respond. The audience applauds louder now, divided energy crackling through the studio. Joy taps her pen against the table, considering him. So you're saying the problem isn't passion, she says slowly. It's how people express it. Yes, Robert answers, without hesitation. Because when expression turns into hostility, everyone stops hearing the message. For a split second, there's silence. The kind that feels intentional. Joy exhales, leaning back again. Well, she says, some people would argue a little hostility is exactly what gets attention. Robert nods once. Attention isn't the same as progress. The crowd reacts, some cheers, some murmurs of dissent. The camera's cut between faces, a woman nodding emphatically, a man frowning, Joy watching Robert with renewed interest. This isn't the conversation anyone expected, and that's exactly why it's beginning to matter. Robert feels a strange mix of adrenaline and resolve. He didn't come here to clash, but he won't shrink either. He can sense it now. This is no longer about wildlife or television formats. It's about tone, about values, about what kind of voice deserves the spotlight. Joy straightens, preparing her next move, and Robert knows the easy part of the interview is over. The audience leans in as if pulled by a single breath. Somewhere backstage, a producer watches the clock, already imagining the headlines. On set, two worldviews sit across from each other, polite smiles fading, tension sharpening. And as the conversation edges closer to something combustible, one thing becomes clear. This moment isn't going to pass quietly. The conversation doesn't cool down. It subtly pivots, like a camera sliding to reveal a second, sharper angle. Joy's lips curve into a knowing smile, the kind that signals she's about to press where headlines live. Robert senses it before the words land. He's learned to read rooms, animals, crowds. This room is alert now, hungry. So, Joy says, glancing down at her notes, then back up at him. Since we're talking about attention and progress, let's talk about the moment that lit up the internet this week. A ripple of anticipation moves through the audience. Robert's shoulders square. He knows exactly what's coming. The Taylor Swift offer, Joy continues. Inviting one of the most famous women on the planet to host a wedding at Australia Zoo. Some people thought it was charming. Others called it opportunistic. A few said it was calculated publicity. What was it really? The audience murmurs, some amused, some skeptical. Robert exhales softly, steadying himself. It was an invitation rooted in kindness, he says. A light-hearted gesture. Nothing more. Joy tilts her head. But you knew it would go viral. Robert meets her gaze. I knew it would make people smile. That's not the same thing, Joy replies. The studio quiets, every word suddenly amplified. When someone with your platform speaks, especially about someone like Taylor Swift, it becomes a statement. Do you think it crossed a line? Robert pauses. In that brief silence, the weight of fame presses in, the way one comment can eclipse years of work. I think people project meaning onto moments, he says carefully. I didn't attach conditions. I didn't ask for attention. I offered a space that represents conservation, love for wildlife, and family. Joy leans forward. Yet it put you in the middle of pop culture frenzy, she says. Swifties dissecting motives. Commentators questioning whether you were borrowing someone else's spotlight. A low of ripples through the audience. Robert feels the sting, not because the question is unfair, but because it's familiar. I don't need to borrow a spotlight, he says, voice calm but edged now. I've spent my life trying to shine it on animals that don't have one. Applause breaks out, uneven but sincere. Joy waits for it to die down. Then why not keep it about them? She asks. Why insert yourself into a celebrity romance? Robert's jaw tightens. He thinks of how quickly a warm gesture becomes a headline, how nuance disappears in a scroll. Because conservation doesn't exist in a vacuum, he replies. When culture pays attention, we have a chance to redirect that attention to something meaningful. Joy smiles thinly. So it was strategic. It was hopeful, Robert counters. The room hums. Joy taps her pen again. Hope can look a lot like branding, she says. Especially when it comes from someone whose image is carefully protected. Robert shifts slightly, the first visible sign of discomfort. My image isn't a shield, he says. It's a responsibility. Joy's eyes narrow, intrigued. Then let's talk responsibility, she says. Some fans felt you were trivializing Taylor Swift's privacy. Others felt you were capitalizing on her relationship. Did you consider how it might land? Robert nods slowly. Of course. That's why the tone mattered. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't persistent. It was a door left open. A woman in the audience claps once, loudly. A few others follow. Joy lets it happen, then lifts a hand. But when you leave a door open on television, she says, millions walk through it. Robert smiles faintly. And some walk through with good intentions. Joy chuckles, a sound that blends humor with challenge. You're very good at this, she says, deflecting without dodging. Robert's eyes soften. I'm not deflecting, he says. I'm explaining. The cameras cut to audience faces, one young woman nodding, an older man shaking his head. The divide is visible, tangible. Joy senses it and presses harder. Let me ask you directly, she says. If Taylor Swift had never existed, would that invitation have been news? Robert doesn't answer immediately. He thinks of the zoo, of weddings held quietly among trees, of moments no camera ever captured. Probably not, he admits. And that's okay. Joy pounces gently. So the name mattered. The reach mattered, Robert says. There's a difference. Joy leans back, considering him. Some critics say this is the beginning of a pivot for you, she says. Less conservationist, more celebrity personality. Is that fair? The question lands heavier than the others. Robert feels it in his chest. No, he says firmly. And I won't apologize for being visible if visibility helps the mission. The audience reacts, applause, a few boos, tension crackling. Joy raises her eyebrows. Even if it blurs lines, she asks. Lines were always blurred, Robert replies. My father was a television personality. Visibility built conservation. Joy's expression shifts, the mention of Steve Irwin changing the air. Your father, she says softly, wasn't afraid of controversy. Robert nods. Neither am I. I'm afraid of silence. The room goes quiet again, the kind of quiet that signals a moment has landed. Joy studies him, perhaps seeing not the headline but the human beneath it. So you're saying the offer to Taylor Swift wasn't about fame, she says. It was about leverage. It was about invitation, Robert corrects. Decay. A beat. Then applause, louder this time, mixed with murmurs of dissent. Joy smiles, half admiring, half skeptical. You realize, she says, people will still argue about it. Robert nods. They already are. The camera pulls back slightly, capturing the whole table, the audience, the charged space between them. This isn't just a discussion anymore. It's a referendum on intent, on modern celebrity, on whether good deeds can survive the glare of fame. Robert sits tall, calm but resolute. Joy watches him, sharp and curious, ready for whatever comes next. Outside the studio, phones are already buzzing, clips being cut, opinions forming. Inside, the conversation has crossed a line, from polite debate into cultural reckoning. And as the lights burn bright and the tension refuses to fade, it's clear this clash is only deepening, not resolving. The tension doesn't dissipate after the swift discussion. It sharpens, like a blade drawn slowly from its sheath. Joy adjusts in her chair, sensing the audience's divided energy, the producer's excitement buzzing just beneath the studio's polished calm. Robert feels it too, that shift when a conversation stops being about a single moment and starts probing character itself. The kind of moment that follows you long after the camera is shut off. You keep coming back to intention, Joy says, voice measured but pointed. But intention doesn't always erase impact, especially when the internet decides to interpret for you. Robert nods. That's true, he says. And that's part of the challenge of existing publicly. Joy doesn't let him rest there. So how do you deal with backlash? She asks. Because this wasn't just playful debate. You had critics saying you were naive. Others saying you were manipulative. Some even questioned whether your nice guy image is real. A hush falls over the audience. Robert swallows, feeling the weight of the word real. I deal with it by remembering why I do what I do, he replies. And by listening when criticism is fair. Joy tilts her head. And when it's not? Then I let it pass, Robert says. Because not every voice deserves equal space in your head. A ripple of applause. Joy smiles briefly, then presses again. That's easy to say when people adore you, she says. But public affection is fickle. Today you're the wholesome conservationist. Tomorrow, you're a headline someone tears apart for clicks. Are you prepared for that? Robert exhales, the breath slow and deliberate. I grew up watching it happen to my family, he says. I'm not new to it. The audience senses the shift. This is personal now. Joy leans forward, softer but no less intense. Your father was beloved, she says. But he was also criticized. Mocked. Misunderstood. Do you feel pressure to live up to that legacy without repeating the same controversies? Robert's eyes flicker, emotion rising just beneath the surface. Every day, he admits. But I also know that playing it safe would dishonor what he stood for. Joy studies him, searching for cracks. Yet you choose restraint, she says. Is that growth or fear? Robert straightens. It's choice, he says. There's a difference. The audience murmurs. Joy gestures toward them. Look around, she says. Half of them agree with you. Half don't. That's the reality of public discourse. So when you make a comment like the Taylor Swift offer, aren't you inviting this split? Robert nods once. Yes, he says. And I accept that. Joy raises an eyebrow. Even if it costs you. Robert doesn't answer immediately. In his mind, images flash, animals released back into the wild, kids watching him with wide eyes, his family standing together after loss. If it costs me comfort, he says finally, that's a price I can pay. The audience reacts, some applause, some audible skepticism. Joy's expression tightens, not in anger, but in challenge. What if it costs you credibility? She asks. Robert meets her gaze, unflinching. Then I'll earn it back through actions, not silence. A beat. The room feels charged, almost electric. Joy leans back, folding her arms. You're very composed, she says. Some would say rehearsed. A few gasps. Robert's lips press together briefly. Composure doesn't mean I don't feel it, he says. It means I respect the space enough not to explode in it. Joy smiles thinly. Television thrives on explosions, she says. Robert smiles back, just as thin. And yet here we are, still talking. The audience laughs nervously. The tension is palpable now, not hostile, but razor sharp. Joy taps her pen again, glancing toward the camera. Let's be honest, she says. Part of why this conversation matters is because people are projecting bigger questions onto you. About celebrity, about activism, about whether being likable is enough anymore. Robert nods. I know, he says. And I don't claim to have all the answers. Joy's voice softens, but the edge remains. So what do you say to the people who feel disappointed? She asks. Not angry, just let down. The ones who thought you'd stay above the fray. Robert's chest tightens. I'd say being above the fray isn't real, he says. We're all in it. The difference is how we move through it. A woman in the front row nods vigorously. A man a few seats away shakes his head. Joy notices, gesturing subtly. See, she says. Division. Conversation, Robert corrects. Joy laughs lightly. You're persistent. It matters, Robert says simply. For a moment, Joy seems to consider backing off. Then she shifts, eyes brightening. One last thing, she says. If you could go back, before the headlines, before the debates, would you still make that offer? The question lands heavy. Robert closes his eyes for a fraction of a second, then opens them. Yes, he says. But I'd be prepared for what followed. Joy nods slowly. That's honesty. The audience applauds, louder now, though the tension doesn't fully release. The cameras pan across faces, thoughtful, conflicted, energized. Joy turns slightly toward the audience. This, she says, is why these conversations matter. Robert sits quietly, pulse still racing beneath his calm exterior. He knows this exchange will be dissected, clipped, debated. He knows some will praise him, others will condemn him. But in this moment, under the studio lights, he feels something steadier than approval. Joy looks back at him, expression unreadable. You've handled yourself well, she says. Even when pushed. Robert inclines his head. That's the job, he says. For both of us. A murmur of appreciation. The conversation pauses, suspended, as if the studio itself is holding its breath. Outside, the world is already reacting, tweets forming, opinions hardening. Inside, the clash has reached a different phase. Not louder, but deeper. The easy answers are gone. What remains is tension that lingers, unresolved, waiting for the final act. The moment the camera is cut to commercial, the energy in the studio doesn't drop, it shifts. Applause breaks out, not thunderous but sustained, layered with murmurs and whispered debates. Some audience members lean toward each other, already arguing in low voices. Others sit quietly, processing what they've just witnessed. Robert remains seated for a second longer than necessary, hands resting on the table, eyes focused somewhere beyond the lights. Joy adjusts her papers, her expression composed, professional. But there's a flicker there, recognition that this wasn't just another segment. When the show returns, the wrap-up is brief, almost restrained, as if everyone understands the real moment has already happened. As the final applause sounds and the credits roll, Robert stands, shaking hands with the hosts. Joy meets his eyes and nods. No smile, no challenge, just acknowledgement. They've crossed something together, and neither of them pretends otherwise. Backstage, producers buzz with quiet excitement. Phones are already lighting up. Assistants whisper about clips trending before the episode has even finished airing on the West Coast. Robert walks down the corridor, jacket slung over his arm, feeling the delayed rush of adrenaline. His chest feels tight, not with regret, but with awareness. He knows this moment won't belong to him anymore. It's already been released into the world. Within minutes, social media ignites. Short clips of the exchange flood timelines. Joy's pointed questions, Robert's calm but firm responses. The line about being afraid of silence repeated again and again. Some posts praise him as thoughtful, mature, a refreshing presence in a culture addicted to outrage. Others accuse him of calculated innocence, of hiding ambition behind politeness. Hashtags form, split cleanly down the middle. Supporters and critics talk past each other, each convinced they saw the truth. News outlets pick it up fast. Headlines sharpen the moment into something more combative than it felt in real time. Robert Irwin pushes back on the view. Joy Behar challenges wildlife star over celebrity stunt. Commentary panels dissect his tone, her intent, the generational contrast playing out in real time. Some call it a respectful debate. Others label it a clash of values. The word heated appears everywhere. At Australia Zoo, staff gather around a screen, watching clips loop. Some smile with pride. Others worry quietly about donors, partnerships, the unpredictable consequences of viral controversy. Robert's phone fills with messages, family checking in, friends offering support, advisors suggesting statements, clarifications, next steps. He doesn't respond right away. Instead, he steps outside, letting the air settle his thoughts. Across the country, living rooms buzz. Viewers argue over dinner tables. Comment sections overflow. People who've never followed conservation suddenly have opinions about Robert Irwin's character. Some young fans feel seen, inspired by his refusal to shout. Others feel conflicted, unsure whether calm is enough anymore. Joy Behar, meanwhile, becomes part of the story too, praised by some for asking hard questions, criticized by others for pushing too far. The segment takes on a life of its own. Late that night, Robert finally sits down, scrolling through reactions. He reads praise and criticism alike, the words blurring together. What stays with him isn't the noise, but the intensity, the proof that people are engaged, arguing, paying attention. He thinks back to the studio, to that charged silence between questions, to the feeling that something real was happening beneath the performance of television. He knows tomorrow there will be follow-ups, interviews, requests for clarification. He also knows there's nothing to take back. The offer to Taylor Swift, the conversation with Joy, the stance he took without raising his voice. It's all part of the same reality now. Visibility has a cost, and tonight, the bill came due. In the end, the audience reaction tells the real story. Not applause or boos, but participation. People leaning in instead of tuning out. Disagreeing loudly instead of scrolling past. Whether they side with Robert or Joy, they are talking about intent, impact, celebrity, responsibility. About whether being decent is still powerful in a culture that rewards extremes. That's the aftermath no headline can fully capture. A moment that didn't explode, but echoed. A clash that didn't end with a winner, but with a question left hanging in the air. Now it's your turn. What did you see in that exchange? Was Robert Irwin standing his ground with integrity? Or was Joy Behar right to push harder? Drop your opinion in the comments and join the conversation. And if you want more explosive, dramatic stories like this one, make sure you *** subscribe to Prime Talk ***, because the moments everyone argues about are just getting started.